Then he goes on to say that World War II reached its brutal end in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Again, the heart of the American lie, the myth at the start of the American empire, or at least the current phase of it. I was also in Hiroshima. NHK, Japanese public television, brought me over there to do commentary. And it was sad to see Obama continue the obfuscation that's going on since 1945, since the atomic bombing, since Truman's initial announcements. What do we know? We know that in early February, Prince Konoe, the former prime minister, sent a note to the emperor, which he said, "I regret to inform you, but defeat is inevitable." The Japanese had effectively known since the Battle of Saipan the previous summer that they were not going to win militarily. And as Konoe says, the key really is how to prevent a communist revolution in Japan when the word spreads that we're surrendering. The Japanese War Council, Supreme War Council, in mid-May issued a statement saying that entry of the Soviet Union into the war will not only end the Japanese empire, it's going to lead to Japan's surrender. The United States knew that. We'd broken the Japanese codes. We've been intercepting their telegrams for years now. And beginning really in May, June, July, they were getting more and more desperate. In fact, President Truman himself on July 18th refers to the intercepted Japanese telegram as the telegram from the Jap emperor asking for peace. The telegram from the Jap emperor asking for peace. Truman knew this. They all knew this. They knew there were two ways to end the war without use of the bomb. Number one, change the surrender terms. Let the Japanese know they could keep the emperor. The emperor to them was a divinity, divine force, and thought of the United States coming in and executing the emperor was so unacceptable that they would have continued to fight. And then in the summer of 45, Douglas MacArthur, the head of the Southwest Pacific Command, issues a background report in which they say that execution of the emperor to them would be like the crucifixion of Christ to us. All would fight to die like ants. They knew that. In fact, almost all of Truman's advisors urged him to change the surrender terms, let the Japanese know they could keep the emperor. The only one serious advisor who had resisted was Jimmy Burns. And Burns becomes Secretary of State on July 3rd. And that's who Truman relied on. But all of the other top advisors in the State Department and the War Department urged Truman to change the surrender terms, but he refused to do so. The second way to end the war was to wait for the Soviet invasion. U.S. intelligence had been saying since April that Soviet entry into the war would convince all Japanese that further resistance is futile. It would lead to the surrender. Right after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, President Roosevelt implored Stalin to come into the Pacific War. But Stalin was fighting the war in Europe. Most Americans don't know, and probably most Brits don't know, that throughout most of the war, the U.S. and the British were fighting 10 German divisions between us, while the Soviets were fighting more than 200 German divisions. The Soviets were doing all the fighting. That's why even Churchill says the Red Army tore the guts out of the German war machine. We knew that. But for that reason, Stalin did not agree to come into the Pacific War till the meeting at Yalta in February of 45. And there he promises that the Soviets will come in 3 months after the end of the war in Europe. 3 months, which would put it right around August 8th, the exact time that it happened. What did Truman know? Truman went to Potsdam in mid-July. He had lunch with Stalin on July 17th. Stalin assures him the Soviets are coming in. Truman writes in his journal, Stalin will be in the Jap war by August 15th. Finny Japs when that occurs. He writes home to his wife Bess the next day. The Russians are coming in. We'll end the war a year sooner now. Think of all the kids who won't be killed. Truman knew that. And the question really is, why did the U.S. drop the bomb?